The emergency transmission crackled through the void of space, its desperation echoing across light years to reach the blue marble that was Earth. Ambassador Cathera's voice trembled as she spoke into the quantum communicator, her usually perfect composure shattered by the horrors she had witnessed. "Please, anyone who receives this message," her melodic voice carried the weight of an entire civilization's fear. "The Cerinthian Empire is falling. Our peaceful worlds burn under the assault of the Nexari horde. We have tried everything, diplomacy, evacuation, even surrender. Nothing stops them. They consume everything in their path." In the depths of Earth's military command center, General Tobias Grant stood before the massive holographic display showing the galaxy's current conflicts. The 60-year-old veteran's weathered face remained stoic as he listened to the alien plea for help. Around him, his staff officers whispered among themselves, calculating the logistics of a rescue mission across hostile space. "Sir," his aide approached cautiously, "the Joint Chiefs are requesting your recommendation. Do we deploy the Fifth Fleet?" Grant's steel-gray eyes never left the display. The Fifth Fleet was Earth's pride, gleaming battleships with the latest technology, commanded by the Academy's finest graduates. They were humanity's sword and shield, the force that had earned Earth respect among the galactic community. "No," Grant said quietly. "We're sending the outcasts." The room fell silent. The outcasts weren't an official designation, but everyone knew what it meant. Ships that were too old, too experimental, or too problematic for the main fleets. Crews that didn't fit the military mold. Veterans who asked too many questions. Officers who colored outside the lines. Personnel who were brilliant but couldn't follow standard protocols. Captain Jackson Riley stood in his quarters aboard the frigate, Defiant Horizon, reading the mission briefing with growing disbelief. At 32, he was young for a captain, but his unconventional thinking had earned him both admirers and enemies within Earth's naval hierarchy. His dark hair was perpetually disheveled, and his uniform never quite sat as perfectly as regulation demanded. "They're really doing this," he muttered, running a hand through his hair. "Sending us on a diplomatic suicide mission." The door chimed, and Lieutenant Zara Phoenix entered without waiting for permission. Her auburn hair was pulled back, in a regulation bun, but rebellious strands framed her face, highlighting the intelligence that burned in her green eyes. She and Jackson had served together for 3 years, their professional relationship complicated by an attraction neither had acted upon. "Let me guess," Zara said, settling into the chair across from his desk with the casual grace that made his pulse quicken. "You're brooding about the mission parameters again." "I'm not brooding," Jackson replied, though his tone suggested otherwise. "I'm calculating our odds of survival. They're not encouraging." Zara leaned forward, her expression growing serious. "Jax, what if this isn't the joke everyone thinks it is? What if they chose us specifically because we're different?" Before he could answer, the ship's comm system crackled to life. "All senior staff to the briefing room, priority 1. The briefing room was cramped, a far cry from the spacious command centers of the flagship vessels. Around the table sat the other misfits who would determine the fate of an alien civilization. Commander Dex Vanguard, a grizzled veteran whose career had been derailed by his refusal to abandon wounded comrades during a classified operation. Engineer Raven Cross, whose experimental modifications had saved ships, but violated so many regulations that she'd been transferred to special projects. Pilot Orion Blake, whose reckless flying style was legendary and legendarily insubordinate. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jackson began, activating the holographic display. "We've received additional intelligence about our destination. The Cerinthian Empire isn't just another alien civilization. They're pacifists who abandoned military technology centuries ago. Their cities are works of art, their culture devoted to beauty and harmony. And now they're being butchered by the Nexari horde." Dex added grimly, "I've heard rumors about these Nexari. They don't just conquer, they consume. Every resource, every life form, everything." Raven's fingers danced over her tablet, pulling up technical specifications. "According to this data, the Nexari use brute force tactics, overwhelming firepower, numerical superiority, intimidation. They're not prepared for unconventional warfare. Because there's nothing unconventional about running for your life, Orion said with dark humor. Face it, Captain. We're being sent to die so the brass can say they tried. Zara's hand moved unconsciously to rest on Jackson's arm, a gesture of support that sent warmth through him despite the circumstances. Or maybe, she said quietly, they're sending us because desperate times call for desperate measures. When conventional tactics fail, you need people who think differently. The next hours passed in a blur of preparation. The small fleet of outcasts, 7 ships in total, each bearing scars and modifications that marked them as different, prepared for the journey to Cerinthian space. As they loaded supplies and ran final diagnostics, an undercurrent of nervous energy ran through the crews. Jackson found himself on the observation deck as Earth fell away behind them, its blue surface shrinking to a distant point of light. Zara joined him, standing close enough that he could smell her subtle perfume over the recycled air. Regrets? She asked softly. About the mission? No. He turned to face her, noting how the starlight caught in her hair. About other things? Maybe. Such as the question hung between them, loaded with 3 years of unspoken possibilities. Military regulations discouraged relationships between officers, but they were heading into the unknown, possibly to their deaths. Normal rules seemed less important now, such as never telling you how I feel, he said, his voice barely above, a whisper. Zara's breath caught, her eyes searching his face. Jax, I know the timing is terrible, he continued, but if we don't make it back... She silenced him by stepping closer, her hand finding his cheek. The timing is perfect, she said. We're about to attempt the impossible. We might as well be honest about what matters. Their kiss was gentle at first, then desperate, as if they were trying to pour years of suppressed emotion into a single moment. When they finally parted, both were breathing hard. So, Zara said, a smile playing at her lips, ready to save an alien civilization? With you, I'm ready for anything. Unknown to them, similar scenes were playing out across the fleet. Crisis had a way of stripping away pretense, forcing people to confront what truly mattered. Raven found herself in passionate conversation with a young engineer who shared her love of impossible problems. Orion discovered that the communications officer he'd been flirting with for months felt the same attraction. Love, it seemed, was humanity's secret weapon, the thing that made them fight not just for survival, but for something greater. As the fleet entered hyperspace, bound for a distant corner of the galaxy where an ancient civilization faced extinction, none of them could know that their greatest strength lay not in their ships or weapons, but in their very humanity. Flawed, passionate, and utterly unpredictable. The stars streaked past the viewports like tears of light, carrying Earth's outcasts toward a destiny that would reshape the galaxy's understanding of what it meant to be human. And at the heart of it all, love bloomed in the darkness between stars, proving that even in humanity's darkest hour, hope could flourish. The real battle was just beginning. The Cerinthian capital world appeared before them like a jewel against the black canvas of space, its crystalline cities catching the light of twin suns. But the beauty was marred by smoke columns rising from burning districts and the ominous shadows of Nexari warships hanging in orbit like vultures. Princess Valora stood on the observation platform of her palace, watching the small human fleet emerge from hyperspace. Her species was known for their ethereal beauty, tall, graceful beings with opalescent skin that shifted colors with their emotions. Right now, her skin flickered between deep blue despair and faint silver hope. 7 ships, her advisor whispered, beside her. Only 7 ships to face the entire Nexari armada. Valora's lavender eyes tracked the human vessels as they took position. They looked nothing like the sleek warships she had expected. These were mismatched, scarred, and improvised. Some bore obvious repair patches. Others had unusual modifications that defied standard military design. Perhaps, she said softly. 7 is enough. Aboard the Defiant Horizon, Jackson stood on the bridge with Zara at his side, their fingers intertwined as they studied the tactical display. The Nexari fleet outnumbered them 50-1, massive dreadnoughts bristling with weapons designed for overwhelming destruction. "Incoming transmission from the Nexari flagship," reported the communications officer. The holographic display shimmered, revealing War Chief Brutax in all his terrifying glory. The Nexari leader was a mountain of muscle and chitinous armor, his forearms ending in razor-sharp claws. Scars crisscrossed his face and his eyes burned with predatory hunger. "Human insects," Brutax's voice rumbled like grinding stone. "You arrived too late. The Cerinthians will fall today, and you will burn with them. Surrender now, and I will grant you quick deaths." Jackson squeezed Zara's hand before stepping forward. "War Chief Brutax," he said calmly, "I'm Captain Riley of the Earth Defense Fleet. We're here to escort the Cerinthians to safety. You can either let us pass or we can do this the hard way." Brutax's laugh was like boulders crashing together. "7 ships against my armada? You humans are either very brave or very stupid. Why not both?" Zara said, stepping up beside Jackson with a smile that made his heart race even in this moment of mortal danger. The war chief's expression darkened. "Very well. You will learn why the galaxy fears the Nexari horde. Attack." The space around them erupted into chaos as Nexari warships opened fire. Plasma beams and kinetic rounds filled the void, a deadly light show that would have overwhelmed any conventional fleet. But the human ships didn't respond conventionally. "Raven, now!" Jackson called into his comm. In the engine room, Engineer Raven cross-activated her latest modification with a grin that mixed madness and genius in equal measure. "Shadow protocol engaged," she announced as the human ships seemed to dissolve into nothingness. The Nexari weapons passed harmlessly through empty space as the human fleet used experimental cloaking technology to become ghosts among the stars. But this wasn't just about hiding. It was about striking where the enemy least expected. Pilot Orion Blake led his squadron in a dance between dimensions, using microjumps to appear inside the Nexari formation before vanishing again. His fighter craft moved like thoughts made manifest, impossible to predict or track. "This is Wildcard Squadron," Orion's voice crackled over the comm, excitement clear in his tone. "Beginning surgical strikes on their command vessels. Time to show these aliens what human creativity looks like." Princess Valora watched in amazement as the tiny human ships began dismantling the massive Nexari fleet with precision strikes. They didn't try to match firepower with firepower. Instead, they turned the battle into something beautiful and deadly, like a dance of death among the stars. "How are they doing this?" Her advisor gasped as another Nexari dreadnought lost power and began drifting. "They fight with their hearts," Valora whispered, her skin now glowing with golden admiration. "Look how they move together, how they trust each other completely. They're not just warriors. They're lovers, partners, friends willing to die for each other." On the Defiant Horizons bridge, Jackson and Zara worked in perfect harmony. She anticipated his orders before he spoke them. He trusted her tactical assessments without question. Their connection had deepened beyond the professional into something transcendent. "Nexari battle group moving to flank position," Zara reported, her fingers flying over her console. "I see it," Jackson replied, already adjusting their course. "Dex, can you give us covering fire?" Commander Vanguard's gruff voice came back immediately. "Already on it, Captain. These youngsters are about to learn why experience matters." The veteran's ship, the Old Reliable, might have looked like a flying scrapyard, but its weapons had been lovingly maintained for decades. Each shot was placed with surgical precision, turning Nexari shields into pretty light shows before crippling their engines. War Chief Brutax roared in frustration as his seemingly invincible fleet was picked apart by the small human force. "Impossible! No one can fight like this! What kind of warriors are you?" It was Zara who answered, her voice carrying across all channels with fierce pride. "We're not just warriors, War Chief. We're humans. We fight for love, for hope, for the people we care about. That's something your kind will never understand." The battle reached its climax as the human ships converged on Brutax's flagship. But instead of a direct assault, they did something the Nexari couldn't comprehend. They began transmitting. Music filled the void of space. Human music, Everything from classical symphonies to rock ballads to love songs that spoke of passion and devotion. The Cerinthians heard it too, their cities beginning to glow as they realized they were witnessing something unprecedented. "What is this noise?" Brutax demanded, but his voice carried uncertainty for the first time. "It's what we fight for," Jackson said as he wrapped his arm around Zara's waist, pulling her close. "Beauty, art, love, hope, all the things that make life worth living." Raven's modifications reached their peak as she channeled the emotional resonance of the music into a weapon unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The human ships began to shine with warm, golden light that spread outward like wings of fire. The light touched the Nexari vessels, and something impossible happened. The brutal warriors inside began to remember. They remembered their own homeworld before the endless conquest, their own loves before the hunger for battle consumed them, their own dreams before they became nightmares. One by one, Nexari ships began powering down their weapons. Crews that had known only violence for generations suddenly felt the weight of what they had become. Some tried to fight the feeling, but the human music and light were relentless in their compassion. War Chief Brutax's flagship was the last to surrender. The massive creature stood on his bridge, forearms trembling as memories of who he had been flooded back. He had been different once, younger, gentler, capable of love before the horde corrupted him. "How?" he whispered into the calm, his voice breaking. "How did you do this to us?" Jackson looked into Zara's eyes, seeing his own love reflected there, before answering. "We reminded you that you're not just monsters. Somewhere inside, you're still people. People who can choose to be better." The aftermath was unlike anything in galactic history. The Nexari horde, faced with the full weight of their actions and the possibility of redemption, began the long journey toward healing. Some chose to return to their distant homeworld to rebuild what they had destroyed. Others asked to serve, as protectors of the worlds they had once terrorized. Princess Valora met the human officers in her crystal palace, her skin now radiating pure gold with gratitude and something deeper. As she looked at Jackson and Zara, seeing how they completed each other, her heart stirred with unfamiliar feelings. "You have given us more than our lives," she said formally. "You have shown us what we thought was only legend. Love that conquers. Hate. Hope that defeats despair." "Your Highness," Zara said with a warm smile, "that's not legend. That's just humanity." The celebration that followed lasted for days. Cerinthian cities bloomed with new art inspired by human music and poetry. Cultural exchanges began immediately, with young Cerinthians eager to learn about human emotions and expressions of love. Orion found himself surrounded by admirers who wanted to learn his flying techniques, but he only had eyes for the communications officer who had guided him through the battle with her steady voice. Raven discovered that several Cerinthian scientists shared her passion for impossible engineering problems, but her heart belonged to the young engineer who understood her genius. As for Commander Vanguard, he found peace at last, knowing that his final battle had been one of healing rather than destruction. On the final night before the human fleet's departure, Jackson and Zara stood on the palace balcony overlooking the restored city. The lights below them pulsed in rhythm with Cerinthian music that now incorporated human melodies. "So," Zara said, leaning against his shoulder, "ready to go home and explain to the brass how we won a war with love songs?" Jackson chuckled, pressing a kiss to her hair. "They probably won't believe us. A handful of misfit ships defeating an entire horde with the power of human emotion. They'll think we're making it up." "Let them think what they want," she replied, turning in his arms. "We know the truth. Love really can move mountains, or in this case, end wars." Their kiss was interrupted by a gentle cough. Princess Valora approached, her skin shimmering with nervous pink hues. "Captain, Lieutenant," she said formally. Then her voice softened. "I wanted to thank you personally, and to ask, would it be possible for a Cerinthian diplomatic mission to visit Earth? I find myself curious about human culture and relationships." Zara smiled knowingly. "Your Highness, I think Earth would be honored to host you, and I have a feeling you'll find human culture very educational." As the human fleet prepared for departure, carrying with them the gratitude of an entire civilization and the first Cerinthian ambassadors in centuries, one truth echoed across the stars. Humanity's greatest weapon had never been their ships or technology, but their capacity to love, to hope, and to see the possibility of redemption even in their enemies. The galaxy would never be the same. And somewhere in the void between worlds, love songs still played, reminding all who heard them that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe is a heart willing to risk everything for another. The outcasts had become legends, and their love story would inspire generations across the stars.